You can find more links to local resources and a profile of the New Mexico Domestic Violence Resource Center on our website, newmexicoinfocus.org. I'm Gene Grant here at the table with this week's Line Opinion panelists. Now, Think New Mexico, a Santa Fe-based think tank, wants lawmakers to consider reforming how capital outlay dollars are allocated to projects around the state. You may remember that the capital outlay funding bill earlier this year did not pass during that regular session, and lawmakers had to come back for a vote in a special session a little while later. Think New Mexico suggests this: a panel instead of lawmakers advocating for projects in their districts. And Rob, let me using a scoring system, by the way, which I want to get to in a second. It takes the fun out of being a legislator. Doesn't it, though? I mean, it just takes the fun right out of it. Does this have a prayer of passing because of that?
Gene, you have stumbled uncontrollably onto the truth, onto the nub of this thing. Yes, that's going to be the major impediment here, is that if you're a state legislator, you want to be able to go to Silver City, you want to go to Deming and say, I brought home the bacon. But I think just about a large number of people within the legislature, outside the legislature, know this system is broken.
Right.
But I think that there are going to be significant impediments. And one of them almost immediately will be that we've got the next session that comes up in Santa Fe, just a 30-day session.
Oh, that's right, too.
This is a major thing to deal with. But I think that Fred Nathan over at Think New Mexico, he's no dummy. I think he realizes that, but at least he can lay the groundwork.
That's right. He's saying all the right things, and we're not trying to take away dessert and replace it with spinach. I love that quote. That was actually pretty cool. But they're onto something here, because he had another quote saying there are lawmakers out there right now who are very frustrated with this system. They don't like this system at all, as a matter of fact. Considering the fact of how many projects go underfunded or unfunded for years, we've got to bring some coherence to this. So is Think New Mexico just basically on the right track, Laura Sanchez-Rive?
Well, I definitely think that there needs to be some reform. I mean, I think anybody who understands the way it's done now will agree that there's problems with the way it's done. I mean, there's no sense of priority. It's a lot of backroom dealing. But I think that having an independent commission, independent from the legislature, also has its own problems, because ultimately the legislators are the ones that are accountable. They're the ones that are elected. I think that taking that prioritization away from them and putting it into an independent commission that is not accountable to the public through elections, and maybe is accountable to those who appoint them. I mean, how do we select that commission? I mean, I think that's also got some problems, but I think we'll end up seeing at some point, maybe not in the next 30-day session, because I do think there'll be a lot of other things, even though I understand this will probably be on the call from the governor. It still is not enough time to actually have a thorough conversation about this. But at some point, I think we'll find some sort of a hybrid between what Think New Mexico is talking about and what the current system with legislator involvement includes.
Right. What would that, Harry, I hear what Laura's saying, but it's interesting. If folks were inclined to bring this to the table and discuss it, you'd think it would have happened by now.
Right.
You know what I mean? So maybe this is something to get just folks to the table. It may not come out exactly the way Think New Mexico's thinking, just say what Laura's saying, but at the same time, let's have it out. Let's see who's on the record who wants to actually do this or not. Maybe that's a good thing. You never know.
And it's pretty clear that this process can be used successfully. So the Think New Mexico report talks about Oklahoma, for example, using a very similar process. We do something very similar for state for schools. So there is a board that looks at school capital outlay. So I think in terms of the politics, it's pretty clear that a lot of folks are going to be pretty unhappy about this. As you pointed out, this takes out the fun of being a legislator. But Think New Mexico also said that New Mexico is a state that doesn't have a lot of resources. So every dollar that goes to something that isn't for necessary infrastructure is a dollar that's being wasted.
That's right. Merritt, I got to ask, though, the dreaded commission thing. There's a lot of heartburn in this state about commissions. These hooded tribunals. Nobody knows who these people are. Laura brings up the point about who appoints these people. It's fraught, as they say, these commissions. We have a ton of them here. There's a lot of frustration. Is this the right way to go in your view? Is a commission the right way to go? Are these people accountable enough?
I don't think so. I think we need something better than our free-form capital outlay system. And essentially it's based on the majority party in each chamber gets the majority of the capital outlay money and distributes it accordingly. I think knowing that going in, the existing committee structure and staff structure could support a year-round capital outlay committee that attach specific criteria.
I like this little nuance here.
And specific criteria. Okay, this is crucial infrastructure. This is emergency. This is quality of life, and give ratings, and then say, okay, we have this much money for and ask our legislators to work it out together.
Right.
Now, that said, doing something like that or a commission is not going to fix what happened in 2015. I think we all need to understand we had a Senate who had essentially a tantrum over working with the GOP House and basically did the legislative equivalent of throwing themselves on the ground, kicking and screaming. And capital outlay was the result. And no commission, no committee is going to change that mindset.
Right, good point there. Let me swing back to you, Laura, on that point again. I'm just trying to see the getting from A to B here is difficult in my mind's eye. You know, at some point, legislators have to weigh in. There has to be a scrum of some sort about who's going to get this stuff, because one person's emergency is another person's, well, we can wait till next cycle kind of a thing. Who actually gets to arbitrate these things? Does it come down to the governor? Is it someone in the back room deal? Everything ends up in a backroom deal anyway, it seems like sometimes. Now we're creating just another door into another back room. You see what I'm saying here?
Right.
It's not terribly transparent.
Well, I think there's
seems
some moving
either.
parts, and I think the independent commission idea is problematic in this case. I mean, there's been other suggestions. Senator Joe Campos, I understand, wrote his dissertation on the capital outlay process.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things that he suggested or that he commented on recently was maybe making sure that one of the state agencies is involved in this process, like DFA, the Department of Finance Administration, and the local government unit of that. There's a whole local government unit that deals with a lot of local issues. Maybe they should be the staff that's involved with this. I think one of the, this idea of a year-round process certainly makes sense. But as soon as we say year-round in the state, it means a lot more money for staff, for committees, and it just means additional expense. Not that that isn't a worthy expense.
Sure.
But I think we definitely would have to change the mindset of a lot of legislators and a lot of, I think, the public, that we have this part-time legislature and very little work being done only within 30 or 60-day sessions.
That's a good
I mean,
point.
we really have enough work, I think, in general, on a lot of issues, and especially capital outlay that we need to prioritize things around year-round.
Rob, let me flip this around a little bit. Perhaps the system makes for a sharper pitch. Perhaps if it's municipalities, mayors, city councils, whatever form of government in these districts and areas, they're actually not pitching to a cozy legislator, but actually a sort of a dispassionate group of folks who are going to decide. Maybe that makes for a sharper pitch. You have to really, really, really make your case made about why something is necessary right now. Could you see a scenario like that happening, in fact, with this scheme?
Yeah, but I could also see the other side as well. I mean, one of the, even though the capital outlay system we've got now is certainly failing in some respects, I think that maybe smaller communities feel that because this current system actually works a little bit better for them as an insurance policy to make sure that they get what they need.
That's right.
Or what they want, I should say.
Yeah.
Because right now, the current system is that each legislator gets a certain amount of dollars, and maybe they'll feel that small communities will feel that, oh, this is another instance where Las Cruces, Albuquerque, and Santa Fe, they're going to get their back scratched.
That's right.
Because a small community like Deming or someplace like that doesn't have that same sort of firepower.
That's right. That's right. No, so we default to Deming, and we will point to you a lot when these issues come up.
okay.
It's a great example. It's a
I
great
love
example.
Deming.
That's right. I love it too.
And I love Laura.
Harry, the final bit here on this, we got just about 30 seconds left. The idea of just having a good public conversation at a minimum cannot be a bad thing on this issue. I mean, there's a lot of folks here who don't even understand the process as it stands now.
And I think New Mexico's really done an incredible public service, as it does every year when it comes out with its reports, trying to bring about the conversation about how we're spending our money and how are the processes by which we're allocating and making decisions, how do those actually work, and do those work to the benefit of people in New Mexico?
And that's a good place to start, isn't it? That's a beautiful place to have a conversation. Now, up next, we learn why one organization is using savings accounts to address both poverty and academic achievement.